Wednesday, September 27th, 2017, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So early market update, and I want to talk a little bit about sound money and the importance of sound money later on. So it's 9:40 a.m., so let's go straight to the markets. Gold being held down here, being sold off even more here since London has been around 7:30. Bullion banks, Bank of England, all the usual crooks out there, you know, chipping away at the gold price. But that doesn't matter, because what's important is that, you know, gold is just a weight, you know, of metal. The fiat price, of course, is important in the long term, but in the short term is just, in my opinion, a lot of noise and trying to get people to stay away from it. So spot gold right now, 1288, well, 1289, down about 5. The low has been 1285.75, and that's just happened in the last 10 or 15 minutes here. Spot silver has held relatively well. It's basically down just 1 cent at 1680. The Dow up 21 points, 22,310. S&P 500 future 2,500 up 3. So stock markets don't seem to do anything anymore, you know, except go up gradually. There's no downside risk. So it's very complacent. I was reading an article. Well, I saw a headline. I didn't read the article, but apparently there's huge bets against volatility. People selling vol, thinking, you know, it's going to stay low. Quite dangerous. People are taking a lot of risk, you know, betting that there won't be any risk. So it's quite interesting. The currencies, the pound, quite weak this morning, down 73 pips, or over 0.5% at 133.84. The euro as well continued to come off, down 58 pips, or 0.5% at 117.33. And the dollar strong against the yen as well. That's not helping gold. It's at 112.93, up 70, up 2/3%. So that's all. The whole thing right now. You know, gold is traded, is a currency. That's what people have to realize, and it's managed by the major central banks. That's how they keep the value of their, you know, pieces of paper that are worthless. Basically, they have still control of the gold price through paper, and that's why it's important that people who want to be in gold and save in gold, they got to do it physically, and also silver. They need to buy the physical gold and silver. None of this ETF rubbish. None of this, you know, Royal Mint in the UK. They're allowing people to buy gold, you know, and keep it with them. That's not the point of gold. Is that it keeps the system honest, and you got to have it physical. And that's another reason why I think nothing beats gold and silver as money, and especially physical, not even cryptocurrencies. There is a counterparty risk in cryptocurrencies. You know, you can't really hold a Bitcoin. You can't really hold Ethereum. You can't really hold Steam. And I'm not putting them off. I'm just saying that my preferred currencies or money, still gold and silver. That's still the only way to be perfectly, you know, hedged or insured monetarily. And I spoke earlier about sound money, and I want to go back to this little book here, the Pocketbook of Gold, a survival manual for monetary mayhem. Some of you have complained that I've read from the book. You know, I can't please everyone. I'll do my best to make it interesting. So you'll be glad to know that this isn't a long part of the book, so I won't be reading that much. For those of you who didn't like that I read the last time. So this is chapter 6, and it's basically just a quote that I've taken here. They quoted Ludwig von Mises, the famous Austrian School of Economics economist. And I quote von Mises. He says, "It is impossible to grasp the meaning of the idea of sound money if one does not realize that it was devised as an instrument for the protection of civil liberties against despotic inroads on the part of governments. Ideologically, it belongs in the same class with political constitutions and Bill of Rights." So it's very interesting, someone might say, well, we live in democracies. We are protected by our representatives, by our president, prime minister, members of Congress, members of parliament. They protect our civil liberties. But without sound money, it's impossible. And, it does say here, protection against despotic inroads on part of governments. And nowadays, most people think that we're free and we live in democracies, but we're not. If we held ourselves to the same standard as the government does, we'd be stealing from people, because that's what they're doing, with the monetary system, with public spending and the central banks. They're basically stealing wealth from everyone, and we are almost half slaves in the West because the size of government has grown, so much. Most of the Western countries is between like 40, to 50%. So everyone working in the private sector is actually almost a half slave, because all the fruits of their labor, half of it has to go to the government. And that's just counting income taxes and social security taxes. That's not counting all the other, value-added tax, VAT, all the duties. So, yeah, that's why I think democracy is a dangerous word. Everyone says, oh, at least we have a democracy. It's not like North Korea or China where they're communist. And I'm not I'm not like saying that North Korea and China are great, but I'm saying that just because we have a democracy doesn't mean that we aren't being screwed. And I think it all goes back to the money, as von Mises said. It's just so important, because without sound money, real physical gold and silver, and that money is also protected by the government that's supposed to protect, civil liberties and property rights. Without that, we're screwed. If the government is doing that to us, and that's what's happening, with the central banks and governments, they've completely let everyone down. And I don't think that's surprising. That's been always the objective. They couldn't change it overnight. You read that in 1799, the Bank of England Bank of England notes more than £1 became legal tender, and they used the Napoleonic Wars as an excuse. And then you've had World War I. Some of the laws they passed in the States were used in 1933 by FDR to get the U.S. off a domestic gold standard as well. So it's all being done very gradually, and that's the point we're at right now. And I wanted to show you also this little, basically it's a gauge for gold sovereigns and half sovereigns. That's how they used to weigh to make sure that the gold sovereign was the right weight. So as you can see there, the gold sovereign is on top of that little scale, and the scale touches the surface. The other little circle is for a half sovereign. I haven't got a half sovereign with me at the moment, but I did it with the full sovereign. And that's what honest weights and measures mean. But nowadays, you know, they just print money, or they print paper and say that it's money. So that's why it's so important for people to be educated about these things. And the only way we're going to go back to a sound money system is when this system of fraud and fiat money and insurmountable debt goes to the dustbin of history. Until then, we're going to keep getting, you know, the majority of the public is going to keep getting screwed, in my opinion. They're not going to earn as much as they should. I'm not saying, you know, there should be, you know, like fixed salaries or anything, but it should be a fair monetary system, sound weights and measures. You know, as Greenspan said in his essay in 1966 about how, you know, gold, how it's the enemy of the welfare statist. And we've got welfare statists all around now. It's not just the socialists, but it's the warmongering, you know, neocons, the corporatists, conservatives, the socialists, the third ways. Everyone is, you know, basically a welfare statist. Even Donald Trump, I'm sorry to say. The only guy that I would trust, but he would have a difficult time doing anything if he was elected president, would be Ron Paul. He's a true believer in minimal, small government, sound money, and civil liberties and protection of the individual. That's what it's all about, the protection of individual rights. If you protect each individual, society as a whole will be protected. Because some people say, oh, society is more important than the individual. Not if you, you know, how can I say, abuse the rights of the individual. Society will never be protected. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is an article I saw in the FT. Don't buy the FT, but sometimes there are interesting things in there. A few days ago, they noticed that Steve Bannon, who was Trump's domestic political advisor, actually went to China to meet one of the top Chinese officials. So I read here from the article. Wang Qishan's Bannon ties fuel talk of second term. Well, second term for this Chinese official. But it says here, Steve Bannon, Donald Trump's erstwhile domestic political advisor, and Wang Qishan make for one of the oddest political couples in Sino-US relations. But the recent secret meeting, it's not secret anymore, between the godfather of the US alt-right movement and the Chinese Communist Party's ruthless anti-graft Tsar was consistent with Beijing's rapidly growing interest in the US economic nationalism. Why am I bringing this up? Well, this guy is supposed to, you know, become much more important in the economic policy part of China. And it says here, one of the diplomats in the article says, it is very curious that Wang Qishan would meet with him rather than another official who deals with the economy. Close quotes. And then the FT says, one possible explanation is that Mr. Wang, who typically receives international guests such as Mr. Bannon, accompanied by an aide or two, will maintain his seat on the Politburo Standing Committee for another 5 years with a financial and economic portfolio, or even be appointed premier. He has hinted, that's Wang Qishan, he has hinted at as much in other encounters this year with international delegations, including one this spring, during which he was flanked by a large team of senior officials from China's central bank and finance ministry, according to two people familiar with the meeting. So I don't know, am I saying there's going to be some kind of monetary agreement between China and the United States, and that, you know, Trump has used Bannon as an envoy? It's all speculation, but I didn't see any, I haven't seen anyone talk about this article, and it came out, 3 or 4 days ago in the FT. I thought that was interesting. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, share it. Also subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. And you can also follow me on steemit.com and on Twitter. I'll talk to you later. Bye.